This is Rainbow Six Vegas. We're on Xbox Series X, so what we get here, aside from the zoomed-in blurry image, is a bit of an improved resolution. I mean, it's still... Actually, you know, it looks pretty clean around the edges. I think I was just absolutely blasting my teammate away. But we also get support for auto HDR, which I think actually adds quite a bit to this one, considering its age. It definitely adds a little bit of much needed vibrancy. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting title. I played more of the second one back in the day, but what we get here is a, you know, a sort of a tactical shooter. That's what the Tom Clancy titles were always focused on. Definitely doing something a little bit more unique with the formula and having you play more of a tactical role as you go around through these different missions, tackling situations, and basically trying to, I don't know, get the job done that you've been tasked outwards. Now, I looked at the online multiplayer, and I think we're actually going to be able to show that off, as odd as that sounds. I definitely did not expect that there would still be people playing it, which is a bit of a surprise. I did a look and I was like, oh wow, there's people online in this. That's really strange. But yeah, you've got your tactical squad, you're taking on these different missions. I mean, it's a very, very old game, right? Like 360 era. Very, very early 360 era. You get the different kind of, I guess you could say, missions that you're working through. It's got cover-based battles and stuff, and yeah, it's interesting to look back at this one. I think this is like the opening mission or something like that as well in regards to, you know, the setup. I do fondly recall these games, but definitely more of a... the second one was more my sort of ride. But yeah, it's got a, I guess you could say, a bit of a neat narrative. It's got some interesting setups. A lot more in the realms of the traditional Tom Clancy titles in terms of the design and the scope of it and how you play it, leaning on that sort of tactical element. And then, of course, adding a bit of the, I guess you could say, you know, Vegas vibe to it as well, which was a neat setting. But yeah, the blur effect in this one really makes things look a bit like muddy. But I gotta say, like, it's a lot, like, it feels really clean around the edges, all things considering. But at the same time, you know, you could still kind of tell that it's a little bit rough in some of the smaller things. You know, when it comes to like some of the smaller objects, like the wires and stuff. It's definitely a little bit roughly aged in that regard, which is fine. I mean, it's an older game, right? So it's just an interesting option and release in the series. I wanted to go back and take a look at it because while we did showcase, you know, Siege, which is definitely the future of the series, it's nice to go back and, you know, kind of see the origins as well of what was once present here. It's just kind of neat to see the scope of it, because it's a much more, I guess you could say, confined experience in terms of the design and the setting and what you're doing with it, but at the same time it's kind of interesting. This was the direction they took, and then obviously the kind of larger in scale and design second follow-up that came afterwards. That one was also kind of cool. And oh, looks like we've got more enemies coming in. Yeah, it's just, it's kind of neat. Like, I think if you've never played a Rainbow Six campaign, like a proper, true one, you might find this really interesting from a historical standpoint. I don't know if you'll necessarily want to go back and revisit it, but I just thought it was kind of fun to dive into these older titles, because I did like this I want to say Siege, but, you know, I did actually like the Vegas style of play quite a bit. I like the setting. You know, it was very unique, I think, at the time, and I don't think we've really had, you know, these types of settings since. It's like they very much lean away from doing this type of, I guess you could call it homegrown, just in regards to, you know, the kind of being American set. I mean, obviously I'm not from America, so it's not homegrown to me, but you get the gist of what I'm saying in that regard. It's kind of cool. And then the super digitized top angle thing there. We've come a long way in shooters. We really, really have. But at the same time, I do find like the tactical element of play that's still very much, you know, present here to be pretty cool. You know, you get different options in terms of how you want to tackle these challenges, in like kind of commanding your squad, difficulty and everything like that. It's interesting, but that's mostly what I want to get across. Is it's a kind of a fascinating sort of experience. Oh, they're dead. Okay, but very, very linear in design. It's much, you know, going through these different areas, getting your task done, and trying to figure out what exactly is going on in these older entries. The snake cam. Oh wow, that's pretty fascinating. But I think with that, what we're going to actually do is swap over to the multiplayer portion of the game, because I want to show off, you know, that portion of the experience, since we actually came across people, which I think is a little fascinating. I didn't, like, I can't believe people are still playing this. I'm genuinely shocked. And I don't know if we'll connect to a match. If not, we're going to continue this forward, but yeah, it's very neat. Oh yeah, and this kind of setting thing is kind of cool too. Nah, I'm good. I don't need to. I mean, we totally destroyed these guys in seconds. It was very effective. At least I thought so. Good job, squad. We are Team Rainbow. Alright, so I jumped into a terrorist hunt kind of local mission. There are matches set up for online, but I can't ever seem to connect to them. They'll say matches ended, so that's a little disappointing. But anyways, I thought I'd at least show off a bit of the terrorist hunt so you get an idea of that in action. Oh wow, that's an enemy. Anyways, this is the most, I think, Vegas-y type one, because it is the whole casino. Yeah, that blur effect just, ugh, not great. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting level, I guess you could say, in terms of the setting and the design. And I just, you know, showing off a little bit extra so you can see it in action. I mean, I'm more or less looking forward to the sequel, because I quite liked how they expanded things. At the same time, you know, I think if you're working through the story, or if you can actually find friends to play, because, you know, you can do the campaign, you can do it cooperatively with others online, which is kind of a big deal. Then there's the kind of terrorist hunt co-op. If you have friends, you can play with them. You know, there's good options for how you want to, like, play with other people, which I think is good. And then there's the multiplayer, so if you got a friend or two, you can just, like, compete against one another and enjoy the levels and stuff. It's just a little bit smaller in scale in terms of, like, how many levels and everything are present, the missions, but still, you know, I'd say a pretty good time. When it comes to the visuals and how well things hold up, I think a lot of it has to do with kind of the blur effect sort of makes some of the visuals look worse when you pop in, but I think when you're just kind of walking around taking in the, you know, the local area, the casino, the design and everything like that actually does hold up quite visually well. And I think it does actually look pretty good. And I mean, this would have been pretty authentic, or fairly authentic back in the day, at least for the design of it and what they were going with, which is kind of interesting, you know, to come in here all these years later and see what they were doing with it. But yeah, when you add that blur effect, it seems like everything gets really fuzzy around the edges. I get the effect that they're going for. So anyways, I don't exactly know where I got cut off, because the game crashed, so that's kind of fascinating. I haven't seen that before, so I don't know if that's a long thing in this one. Wow, I just absolutely keep getting slaughtered in this. Anyways, I thought I'd wrap up and kind of just say it's a neat game. It's definitely something of its time. I would maybe suggest checking out the follow-up, unless you were really curious about, you know, the narrative of this one, or if you had friends to play with. Wow, I'm getting absolutely blasted away. I did not expect this kind of treatment when I came out here to go and hunt terrorists that were causing problems.